too. And so by sharing your questions with us, it gives us an opportunity to be able to make sure that the answers are out there and people and more people know. So what I thought we could do is just take a few minutes and answer some of the questions we've already answered to the people in person. But since the questions are coming in, it's worth some time. And I'm just going to do a little cherry picking and just trying to arrange my screen here so I can see multiple things. So I think the first question I want to cover is the insurance policy still a thing? And so the insurance policy is an idea that we've had for quite a while that right now we're developing the capacity of the farm, and we're really thinking of it as an experiment, and it's sort of an experiment and learning station. But we recognize as things get more bumpy, more people might be looking for a housing alternative and want to come and actually live here on the property. And so we've had this idea that at some point you can kind of cash in your insurance policy. And if you have 100 shares, which is a full footprint, then you could come and live here on the property. The short answer is yes, we are still thinking the insurance policy is a thing. So one of the things, if you are thinking about where you might end up, you might want to think about investing in 100 shares per person. I know it's a lot of money, but it's also buying back your footprint and the natural resources that would be yours in perpetuity. And so, yes, we're still thinking the insurance policy is a thing. It is somewhat complicated because it does depend on us being able to develop the capacity first, because we don't currently have capacity for 16 people to live around here. But that's one of the primary goals, is to develop that capacity. And as we develop it, it becomes available to insurance policy holders. So that's the answer to that first question. Another question is, how do our values affect our day-to-day work? How do our values show up in the work that we do? Anyone want to take this one? I can definitely take it, but I'm curious what other people's answers are.
I'll take a stab. That's violent. I'm not going to frame it that way. I will give it a go. So there are a few different ways that we weave our values into what we do, and one of them is some of our values are the principles of sociocracy, which are things like consent, empiricism, equivalence, accountability. And because we use sociocracy to govern ourselves and organize everything that we do on the farm, the principles come up fairly often. And they often come up when maybe there's a tension or something isn't going, well, the way that we thought it would. And it's like, oh, let's look at the principles and see, are we holding ourselves accountable to these principles? So that's one way that we, in very practical ways, live out our values. And we also we are often talking about things that are going on in the world and sort of thinking about ways that we're organizing ourselves and the ways that we're being inclusive, and really reflecting on how we're doing things in relation to the dominant culture. So recognizing when we might be doing something in a way that is more hierarchical or more patriarchal or less transparent, and thinking about, okay, how can we, gently make a shift into acting in a way where we're creating the culture that we want to be embodying as an organization, as a group of people, and as a farm. So we have lots of regular conversations about what our values are and the world that we want to be creating, and work really hard, all of us, to put that into practice. So it's not a lip surface kind of place. It's very much a reflective, place, and we hold ourselves and each other accountable to our values on a regular basis. If anyone else wants to add
Yeah,
anything.
I'd like to add to that. It's also there's a structure to the day. So these conversations can happen randomly, but we also have created space. So every morning we actually gather, and this is optional, but we tend to all do it. We gather to do a little grounding, and then sharing about how we want to be, together, how we want to be during the day, because we recognize that what's happening now is perforce transforming everything, and it requires personal transformation. So to whatever degree that per individual, and it's, we don't have a program, so it's per individual, to whatever degree people are comfortable and want to share and participate, then we end up all learning from each other, and we end up being able to be there to support each other in whichever we were capable of it at any given moment. So there's so much more that I could say, but I'm going to keep it just to that. So over to whoever would like to add anything.
Jen, you want to give it a go?
Yeah, one thing I can add too is everyone really holds themselves a really authentic place in that, and also being able to appreciate our differences. We also often refer to the parable about the blind people touching the elephant, not knowing that they are touching an elephant. Each one has a different perception of what they're actually touching or feeling into. And that's the way that we get to appreciate our difference, not just tolerate, but really lean into those different viewpoints and perspectives and expand on each other's strengths so that our weaknesses become irrelevant. And yeah, so I really appreciate that as being part of our values as well, and not just having values, but actually living them. So that's what I refer to when I say that we're walking in integrity.
I don't really have anything to add. I think that was all brilliant. Oops. Trying to juggle too many screens. Here's a really simple one. Do shares include any ownership of the actual land? Yes. Basically, that's the heart of the share, is that you are owning a physical property together. The simplest way of thinking about it is if you and a couple other friends went together to buy a farm that you were going to work together, and you just had it divided up into, the different percentages that each person was going to own on the farm. The shares work just like that. And are the shares resellable and refundable? Yes. That once you own a share, you can resell the share to someone else. There are some restrictions on that. We want to make sure that we want to make sure that people aren't profiteering. And we also want to make sure that people who are coming in are fully aware of that shares come with rights and obligations. So there are some restrictions, but they are resellable, and they are potentially refundable, but depending on the cash reserves of the organization at the time. So we have the ability, it's written into our articles of incorporation, that we can, as an organization, buy back shares. But that's only, of course, possible if there's money in the bank to be able to do it. And I think that's probably good enough for now. We have some other questions that we can cover, and just a reminder, everyone is invited to this. We put this out on our social media channels, the link to this conversation every week on Monday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So if you want, you can actually attend in person and share any observations or ask any questions that you might have. So we're more than happy to have that. And I believe that's probably good enough for this week. So I'll just put up our contact information again to leave you with that. And until next week, I guess, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.